Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Instagram Live conversation. I am, as always, proprietor Jason Haas. My guest this week is really one of the icons of wine education around the world. He was the wine director at maybe the most famous wine program in American history, in the Windows on the World, the World Trade Center in Manhattan for 25 plus years. The family tree of wine educators and sommeliers who started their journey with Kevin is majestic. So I cannot wait to get you a chance to meet him and to have a conversation with him. I think it's going to be really exciting. But as I always do, while I'm waiting for people to join, I wanted to share a few pictures as to what's going on here at the vineyard. So it has been sunny and dry, cold at night, relatively warm during the day. We are in this middle zone in California where we have neither gotten the huge rainfall of areas up north, nor are we bone dry like our poor neighbors to the south that are being impacted by those awful fires. But you can see it's very green here. That's from the rain that we got in November and December. It has not rained in January. There's nothing really on the horizon either, which is a little scary. We're hoping that changes. There's still time for us to get up to normal rainfall, but it's the clock is ticking. But that said, it is beautiful out at the moment. This is a very nice climate for people. We have been going through and pruning. So if everything looked like this is a Grenache block, where the whole vineyard would have looked like that just a month ago. Now we're about half pruned, and instead things look like this Mourvedre block. So we've started with the stuff which sprouts last, because pruning tends to spur growth. So we're starting with the stuff we're not worried about pushing too early, and leaving the stuff that we want to keep dormant for a little bit longer. Okay. I will... Oh, what else do we have going on? We have the sheep out in the vineyard, which is really fun. I don't know if you'll be able to see it super well. There's a good picture. So we've got the flock out grazing. They're moving through the whole property. We had a relatively light lambing year this year. We're not 100% sure why. We only got about 30 or 40 lambs with our 90, 100 sheep. So we don't have a huge flock this year, which is okay. Allows them to stay in each block a little bit longer. Got a couple cute pictures of our Mastiff Guardians. That's always fun. What else do we have here? I guess pretty much the story of what's going on in the vineyard. In the cellar, our awesome cellar team is filtering some of the rosés so that those will be ready to go into bottle in a week or two. I got a picture of the outside light shining through the dianthus as it's going from the filter back into tank, which is pretty cool. I love that kind of deep copper pink color. And of course, in addition to the bottling, we're getting ready to put new wines in keg and in boxes. So look for an announcement about that coming next month. And then finally, last thing, one of the first things that we do all year is we dive into all of the wines that we made 10 years earlier. So we have all of our 2015s. We did a retrospective tasting. We're going to be doing a public event next month. If you're interested in how any of those 2015s are tasting, that was the subject of this week's blog. So that's it. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I am going to invite Kevin to join me, and then I can't wait to talk. So. And hopefully this all works as smoothly as it did in our test. Brilliant.
I tell you, this is unbelievable. Modern technology, Jason. It was, my kids. I got 4 kids. They know what they're doing, but still working it out. But it works.
Yeah.
You are. It's noon there.
Technology is amazing when it works.
It's
And this is one of the most powerful and I think one of the easiest tools that I had never used before COVID. And yeah, here we are.
well. Thank you. Thank you for having me with you today. I do have a glass of wine because I always told you I don't do anything. And it's actually from Spain and it's from Rioja, but it's not the one you might think I might drink. What was the name of that winery that your father was involved with? What was it
That
called?
was Marcus de
Oh,
Caceres.
the Caceres. Well, right down the street is Marquise de Riscal. So
Classic.
I'm drinking the 2000. This is the 2020. Just people don't believe me sometimes, and I'm really doing this. So as your father, Robert Haas, Bob Haas to me, was my mentor. So to be on with you, his son, and I hope there's a lot of young people watching because the history of wine in the United States, points to your father, Robert Haas, and the Caceres and other wines that are still around that are doing so well. La Vieille Ferme. Nobody knows, or maybe they do know, but I don't think. Where's La Vieille Ferme? How could you put out a wine that says the Old Farm and
Old Farm
sell
in
it
a
in the
totally unpronounceable collection of letters to people who don't speak French.
and that's why they bought it and tremendous success. But I know you have questions for me, so I'm sorry for but I want to make sure I get my stuff in because they know you. Your people that are on here know you. They know Tablas Creek. They probably know the Perrin family,
Really.
or something a little bit. Where's this all coming from? But I want the people out there to know, and that's why I said let's get
Yeah.
together. That there's
That's
a
actually
there.
that's actually one of the things that one of the ways I wanted to start is that I know when I reached out to you, whatever it was, late last year,
Mhm.
you mentioned that you had lots of fun stories about my dad,
Yeah.
um, and I was wondering if we might start by you sharing a memory or a story or something that you thought people might be interested in.
I got hundreds. I got hundreds. Where to pinpoint it? But Windows on the World. And again, I don't really believe that everybody even knows what Windows on the World is. But Windows on the World was the restaurant on top of One World Trade Center. And I did my 10,000 hours prior to getting to Windows to get the job, which I wasn't looking for. I went out as a salesman to sell wine. I was a rookie. I was only 3 months on the job, and they sent me down to this new restaurant that was opening. And one of the first people I met was your father. And he, uh, well, I don't want to even backtrack, okay, because your grandfather had a
You did?
store called, do you remember the name of
Yeah,
it?
it was M. Lehman.
M. Lehman. Okay, M. Lehman in Manhattan, which was purchased by Sherry, which then
Yep.
became Sherry
Yep.
Lehman, which became the most iconic wine store in the United States until its demise recently. But the great Burgundy wines. I mean, as I think of your father, I think of Burgundy. And this was at the time in the early 70s where Burgundy wines were changing from being, through negociants to estates and making their own wine. Why are you selling the grapes and giving the wine to the major negociants? Make it yourself. And your father was totally involved in that, which changed the whole dynamics for Burgundy. Burgundy was not in good shape back in those days.
Right.
I mean, here we have it now. Oh God, you can go get DRC. Well, anybody can get DRC, but finding Vauqueray or Etienne Sauzet and all of these different. I could name them all. Matter of fact, believe it or not, this is the beverage media. Ready? From 1976,
Oh
and
my.
they're all in there. But your father also, besides teaching me about Burgundy, I mean, I had already been to Burgundy, part of my 10,000 hours, but not like the way your father taught me.
Yeah.
But he also taught my wine classes. Now, the Windows of the World Wine School still continues. It's on Zoom with my partners wine.com. But he used to come in and teach my classes on Burgundy. So I was, I invited him to teach at the classes. By the way, that Windows Nowhere Wine School graduated, if you will, graduated. They all failed. 20,000 people. There's no other wine school in the United States that's no other wine school in the world that comes close to that. And your father, I mean, Burgundy, not like I knew Burgundy. Like, yeah, here we got Chablis and the Côte d'Or, da, 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 but not like your father knew Burgundy.
Right.
And when we tasted those wines, this is the '70s now. How old were you? I don't even. I
Was
mean,
born
I
in
know.
'73, so I was not very big at that point.
Yeah. Okay. So your father was out there working the streets to
Yeah.
support you, right?
I'm very
Uh,
grateful in so many ways.
well, my son. I mentioned this to you, but my son now is the I forget what it is, COO. I'll call it COO of T. Edwards, which is so. I'm very very proud. This just happened January 1st, and I know your father was very proud of what you've accomplished there at Tablas Creek. But and thank you for having an old guy. By the way, I just finished 2 hours of tennis. How do I look?
You
All right.
look amazing.
And I won everything today, so I'm very happy. And that's why I'm having a glass of wine. But I think again, also the people I want to bring back things like Winebow, and how your father people don't know they don't know the backstory. Do you know what I'm saying about how he helped create Winebow or Vineyard Brands? I mean, and there's just so much. He was a pioneer.
Yeah.
Wine was
Thank you. No, it
not.
absolutely was. I just got back from the Vineyard Brand sales meetings. It was my 25th Vineyard Brand sales meetings that I have gone to and presented Tablas Creek to. And like there are still several people on that team who were hired by my dad in his era at Vineyard Brands. And he's been retired from Vineyard Brands since the early 1990s. And there's still members of that team that are there, and the company is still thriving because of the way that he set it up.
Great products. Great products.
Yes,
Only deal with
yes, but
quality.
also, um, he created an employee stock ownership plan, so it has been owned by the employees for 30 plus years,
Mm.
and that means that everybody who is there, like they feel the responsibility of it, and they feel the connection, and that longevity is a rare thing in this day.
Well, I could be I could still be working, maybe not at Vineyard Brands, but of course I think I mentioned this too. But your father had come to me about Winebow, to be partner with him with Winebow, and I was just riding high. Windows on the World was just a magical restaurant for the 25 years that I was there,
Yeah.
and so who knows? We could be working together right now.
Okay, let's talk about Windows a little bit, because I think you're right that, I mean, obviously, it's been a long time since 9/11, and I think the number of people for whom like Windows is this real touchstone is fewer than it was. But it was an incredible place. I mean, if I remember right, you were tasked with making like the greatest wine list that New York had ever seen, and this was what, 1976, 77.
76,
Um,
early 76.
so, can you talk a little bit about sort of what Windows was and what it meant in that era, and how it was different from what had come before?
I'm writing a musical right now on the guy Joe
Uh-huh.
Baum, and your father will be in it somehow. I haven't quite figured out, where he fits in. But the music, Joe Baum is the like you have the music man. He was the restaurant man. He created the Four Seasons restaurant back in 1959, long before there were any great restaurants. He then did restaurants like La Fonda del Sol and Forum of the 12 Caesars, where everybody is dressed in, their togas. That the waiters had togas. The wines were chilled in a helmet, a Roman helmet, and 300 other restaurants. Then he came down to the World Trade Center and hired by the Port Authority to create every food thing in the World Trade Center.
Okay.
So if you had a cup of coffee, it was out of the company. He did it, he completed it, and then he went on to Rainbow Room to redo Rainbow Room. So at one time we owned Windows and Rainbow at the same time. Can you imagine? These are the number one and two largest dollar volume restaurants in the United
Right.
States, and again, magical is all I can say. Then there was the bombing at the World Trade Center in '93, which a lot of people thought that they've totally forgotten about.
Right.
That was the first terrorist attack in the United States, was the bombing
Yeah.
in
I remember.
'93, and we were closed. You were 20 years old or
Right.
something. Anyhow, so in '93 we were closed from '93 to '96, and then the Port Authority, which owned the building, said we want somebody else back. We want Joe back, and Joe came back in '96 to reopen Windows on the world. Bottom line of Windows by the end in September, and I don't mind talking about this because my therapist said I should talk about this. You never are going to get over. We lost 72 people on September 11th. Two of the five people in the wine cellar were actually there. They did not make it out, and but I, I I I. I keep bringing it up because it was such a. I keep using the word magical, but it was that place. But when I got there, I had just turned 25. And I was actually selling wine for Charmer, or what do they call it, Empire right now, right? But I'd already been around to all of the, matter of fact, my publicist, and by the way, anybody out there listening to this, correct me if I'm wrong because I might use this. My publicist says, you are, me, America's first American sommelier. First American sommelier, which was not at Windows. I was at a restaurant in the middle of the country outside of New York City. We got a 4-star rating from the New York Times. And I was 19 at the time. And I knew nothing about wine. So I had to take over that whole thing and create a wine list. But when I got down to the Windows in the World, Joe Baum, this guru, restaurant iconic guru said, I said, Mr. Baum, I said, what do you want? And he basically said what you just said. I want you to create the biggest and the best wine list that New York has ever seen. And don't worry about how much it costs. Okay. And then I called one of your father's friends, which was Alexis Lachine.
Yeah.
And I said, Alexis, I'm coming over. I got some cash. And back in those, France was in dire straits. When your father was doing the business, Burgundy was really a hard sell. And the wines were not, the last great vintage was 69, when coming up to 76. And so he just kept doing it and doing it and doing. So we had all of your father's Burgundies. Bottom line of the 25 years, Windows on the World sold more wine than any restaurant in the world. And it came down to, a little bit of what you're saying, with Vineyard Brands. We had, I don't know, I'm going to throw out 1,800 wines, okay? But the wine list that I gave you when you came in had 100 wines. When you came in 1976, I gave you just 100 wines, and the highest price was $35. You want to see what else? You want to buy a Chateau Lafite Rothschild? We got it, and I'll go with it, and I'll bring it out to you. So, I mean, that was Windows on the World, and what can I say? It was 25 years of my life. I was the only one there for 25 years. Even after the bombing, I stayed there for the 3 years. I was the only one allowed there. It was really, really eerie. From 93 to 96, before they redid
Right.
it, my office was 106 on the 107th floor of One World Trade Center.
Uh,
But
what one of the things I
I'm gonna
hear,
have to have a sip of wine. I'm so sorry,
please,
Jason.
no, no, no,
I'm
it's great.
parched from two
Please
hours
do.
of tennis. Thanks.
Um, so I think one of the things that I hear again and again from people who were involved in that era is that it was sort of the golden era of wine, and the team that you put together has kind of gone on to do all sorts of incredible stuff. And like I had Andrea Robinson on as a guest last year, and she spent quite a while talking about how formative her time at Windows was. And I'm wondering, like, was there something about the people who you were looking for to join that Windows team? Was there something, I mean, something that has enabled them to continue on to be so influential in the world of kind of the sommelier world and the wine education world?
Well, interestingly enough, as I said, I went in to sell wine to these people. Your father knew this woman named Barbara Kafka,
Huh?
who people would not know who Barbara Kafka is, but she actually ended up to be, she was James Beard's. Hopefully everybody knows who James Beard is. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't. And James Beard was the consultant to Windows on the World. So when I got there, one day I'm selling wine, which is nothing. The next day I'm sitting with James Beard, Jacques Pepin, Barbara Kafka, just this whole group of people that all the top people, but they were looking for a young American. That was what they were looking for when I walked in selling wine.
Huh.
They had already interviewed like 25 people for the job, and they definitely did not want anything French. It's an American restaurant, and so I walked in, and I'd already done, as I said, I'd been around to again with no. This is not a silver spoon situation.
Right.
It was 50 years ago, exactly 50 years ago now, in '75. My first trip to Europe on my own, and going to visit all the major regions. So with that in mind, let's hire young Americans and keep it going. Andrea was 21 years old and when I hired her. and she was running my wine school. And then one day she said, "I don't want to run your wine school anymore." I said, "Well, what do you want to do, Andrea?" "I want to write." I said, "Okay." The Windows on the World wine book too, I have to say, um, uh, uh, blessed. Okay, and the Windows on the World wine complete wine course now is 4 million copies.
Yeah.
We sold 4 million copies of that book. And I said, "Andrea, I'm redoing the book. If you want to write, I'm doing a whole wine and food." There she is. A
There she
whole
is.
wine and food. She can say yes or no to this. So I said, "Hey, Andrew, what do you want?" "I want to write." "Okay, I'm redoing the book. I need something to help on the wine and food chapter." And there she is. The first time I think she printed anything. Andrea, you tell me if that's the case, but I think that's what it was. And she went on to write how many books? Running Delta Airlines now for 20 years, 25 years, and her own glassware, all that kind of good stuff. So, and then, actually, Andrea, I said to Andrea, she said, "Well, I want to learn more." And I said, "You got to go to Europe. You got to go to Europe. You got to, just you're not, you're single, you're out of college, just go and do it." And she did it.
And
And I
that's
think
something.
it's the only way you learn.
And that's really what you did. I think I read somewhere that you at one point like hitchhiked to California and visited
Yeah.
every California winery that there was at the time.
Well, there wasn't much. I mean, I go out to Napa now, and Andrea's out in Napa, and so is Karen McNeil and all these other people that I've known for my business life. Um, and actually, that's how she's saying it right now. Andrea's the Peren. I
Yep.
set her up there so that she could go visit, the Beaucastel, etc. Um, Yes, I was driven. When this restaurant in the middle of nowhere outside of Woodstock, New York, which is a half hour from where I'm talking to you right now, it's 20 minutes actually. As I said, I was 19 years old. The guy I played tennis with today, he and I were the oldest. We were both 19. I've been playing tennis with this guy for 50 years. So I'm very happy to beat him today, twice. Anyway, not going there. But so they, I wish I could send you the list that I did. The original list is on Slate. I have it. It's on Slate, and I thought I painted it, and it's actually whiteout. And so it still exists. It's down in the wine cellar. And then I started taking, there was only one course. There was no sommelier society. There was no master sommelier. There was no master of wine. I was on my own. Find something. And I found a course actually that it was called the Grossman Beverage Program. So I took that when I was 20. But the local college had come to us and said, "You got a 4-star rating from the New York Times. You must know something about wine and food. Could you do a wine and cheese class?" And the owner, John Novi, who, by the way, is the first farm to table chef in the United States. So keep that in mind. That's not just my opinion, but that's what most people would say. And we said, "Yeah, we'll do the class." He knew nothing about cheese, and I knew nothing about wine. So I took that class on Monday, and then taught the same class on Tuesday. And then hitchhiked. I couldn't go to California because I could drink it in New York at 18, but 21 was California. Anyhow, I hitchhiked to California. Good experience. Coming back was not a good experience, but hitchhiking there was a great experience. And then there were only 24 wineries in Napa Valley in 1972. You can count them from Beringer to Beaulieu to Inglenook, Trefethen, Mondavi, Sterling. I even went to Buena Vista, which was Buena Vista was in Sonoma. Sebastiani. I even went to visit Almaden and Paul Maison because I didn't know any better. I mean, they were just that's what you could buy. And so yeah, I did that, hitchhiked back, and continued to teach wine classes. And then I graduated college, and then, as I said, 50 years ago, backpacked through it's URL Pass. I'm sure you've done that, URL Pass and youth hostels, and that's how it's done. To anybody, to anybody, I would say that to a young person now. Yeah, take your classes, take the WSET. Absolutely, challenge yourself. But I can't. I don't think I'd want to be with a sommelier that's never been to Bordeaux. I don't want to talk to a sommelier that's never been. They've never been to Tuscany. And in my book, I don't write about anything that I've never been to. Literally, remember the Pope kisses the tarmac? When he arrives into, maybe this Pope can't do it anymore, but I eat the soil.
Yeah.
I actually put the soil, I've been doing that since a child, but I put soil in my mouth just to remember what that limestone is all. It sounds a little dirty,
Uh,
doesn't it?
it,
But anyway,
it sounds very familiar, actually. There was this fun experience where we had Francois Perrin out here, and we happened to have it happened to be the same day that we got a visit from Dan Sogg when he was writing for Wine Spectator. And so we were walking around the vineyard together, and Francois picked up one of the rocks and was talking about the impact of this limestone that we have here. And he licked one side of the rock and then handed the other side to Dan to lick, which like Dan was sort of like, what do I do with this? But it's a vivid memory that I have of that kind of direct translation of soil to terroir.
Or the French goût de terroir,
Yeah.
taste of the soil. Oh, there it is. You're putting it in your mouth, and so that's something. Yeah, I get it. I get it. And so I'm just saying that about, if you're there's I say young people because I guess I'm at the other end right now. Happily, by the way. I'm very happy about that I chose wine as a career. But I must mention this to you. The number one thing in my life is not wine. The number one thing is theater, arts, and music. And I'm working on two screenplays and one musical right now. And number two is sports. I started coaching basketball 45 years ago, and I'm actually going to a basketball game tonight. Number three is wine that pays for one and two. So, so we're working it all in. So I think that balancing it out, about doing other things and having four children also was an interesting experience. They're all out of the house now, which is great, but one in the wine business.
So I would love you to talk a little bit about your book. I mean, you mentioned 4 million copies.
Yes.
I mean, I think it is pretty pretty clearly the most influential wine education book published in the English language. And I don't know how many editions there have been, 30 something editions.
35 right now.
So
And I'm working on the edition now,
cool.
the next one.
So I guess, can you talk a little bit about kind of how you envisioned that book originally when you
Mhm.
first put it together, and then how you're thinking about what kind of this essential reference, like teaching book, like how has your thinking changed about that since that first edition to now edition 36?
It hasn't changed. It's wine. The wine world has grown, and I've grown with it. As I said, my first wine list that I did at that restaurant here in the middle of nowhere, all French wines. That's what it was. It was all French wines in the early 70s, and Germany, I would say German wines. Italy was in dire straits. Spain I was living there when Francisco Franco was still, a dictatorship. Portugal, forget about it. So it was really, your great red wines and white wines of France and German wines. So that's what I concentrated on. But let me really answer your question. If anybody's from New York, I grew up right outside of New York City, not in the city. And I grew up in a little town called Pleasantville, and it was extremely pleasant. But it's where did it find its recognition? Reader's Digest. I don't know. You might be too young to even understand Reader's Digest. It's still out there. It's a magazine.
Yeah.
You go to your grocery store. It will be there as you're checking out. And the whole idea, and my grandmother retired from Reader's Digest, so every Friday she'd bring over all the magazines, and they're small little magazines, and it was the condensed version of any book. The problem with wine when I started is there were all encyclopedic, the books. And if anybody's listening doesn't know who Alexis Lachine is, you need to go and find out. This was your father's group. They were the Rat Pack. Lachine, Sam Aaron of Sherry Lehman, Joe Baum, Frank Schoonmaker. People don't know. Get the name. Look what these people did. And of course, the great English writers like Hugh Johnson. I mean, I would always include Jansen Robinson, but earlier on was Hugh Johnson. And so that's what the books were. And when my students were telling me, nope, nope, we're here to get enough information to be able to go into the retail store or the restaurant to buy the wine. We don't want encyclopedias. Okay, so let's make a simple guide to wine. Let's do the condensed version of wine. Windows on the World, Complete Wine Course is the condensed version. It's much thicker. I wish I could show you the original copy because it was like very thin. Now it's like this because of all the countries.
The world has grown.
The world has grown, and that's the sad part. I don't want to be sad about anything except the Starship Enterprise is now slowing down because there's no new horizons. There are and they're not. To watch Italy come back was unbelievable for
Yeah.
you couldn't drink a Chianti. Rioja, like I said, when your father started Marquez de Caceres, it was 1970, if I'm correct. That was getting out of Franco, and look what they've done in places like Ribera del Duero. Look what Australia. I mean, really, New Zealand didn't have any Sauvignon Blanc 50 years ago. Not a Sauvignon Blanc planted in New Zealand. Look where it is today. And then look what the Wine Spectator, the number one wine for Wine Spectator, is the Chilean Cabernet.
Right.
That's this year, just came out. And then, of course, then you have Argentina and Malbec and boom, boom. But I don't, if somebody knows something, tell me. I am going to do a last trip, Black Sea.
Huh.
I can't go there now. It's a little dangerous to go to the Black Sea, but I'm going to get my own boat. Andrea, if you're there, you can come with me. Jason, come on. We'll just have a fun boat. And I'm just going to hit Georgia, and Turkey and Romania and Bulgaria. But that's just more for fun. These are not big sellers in the United
Right.
States. And the
Um,
one last thing about that, if I may, Andrew's coming, so just write in that you're going to come as well. The other thing is that uh, as I said, simplicity. Oh, I should let you know one other thing. My degree, I did get a degree from college. I told my parents at 19 I'm going in the wine business. They said, no, you're not. You're the first male in our family going to college. You're going to finish college. Okay, so I did. But my degree is elementary education.
okay.
I'm certified to teach nursery through sixth grade. And what's that saying? If you can't teach a fourth grader about something, then you don't know it. I forget who said that. Maybe that was Albert Einstein or something. And language that's got to be brought down.
Yeah.
And I actually don't rate wines on a numerical scale. I never have. I've worked with the Spectator. I created the New York Wine Experience. I don't even know if you know that, but I created the New York Wine Experience for an event at Windows on the World, and then ran it for 10 years, and then that was enough. But the uh, uh, just all of these different things and what happened in the wine world. Matter of fact, in the new edition, the one that just came out, the 35th, it's I wrote 50 pages, and it's called Windows on the Wine and Food Revolution from 1970 to 2020. It's not just about wine. It's about wine and food. So when I do a PowerPoint right now, because I'm still working, I'm hired by corporations and golf clubs and all these people to do different things. So the PowerPoint, the first thing on the PowerPoint is something called Swanson's TV
Uh-huh.
dinner. I don't know if you were subjected to
I
that.
remember them from my youth.
Okay, and the price tag is still on there, 79 cents
Yeah.
on the PowerPoint. The next one is being Catholic, Mrs. Paul's fish sticks.
Okay.
Okay, which I had my sister and I had to every
Hey.
Friday. It was just ketchup, 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 and by Wednesday you still tasted the cod from these terrible cod from these fish sticks. Bottom line, have we come a long way
Right.
in restaurants? I'm actually having dinner with Drew Nieprent from Tribeca Grill, created Montrachet on Thursday. Just a group of us are all getting together to remember those days. But the chefs, in the old days, you couldn't get the chefs out of the kitchen. Now you can't get them back in. They're doing a show. They're doing your show. So I can't cook right now. I'm here with Jason Haas. Anyhow, I could go on, but so I don't know if I answered your question. I don't even remember what your question was. So I'll be sipping more wine.
Um, yeah, I think you did answer the question. The question was basically it's kind of what set apart your book and had it changed. And I think that idea that like wine knowledge can be for everybody, like that's a pretty fundamental change from the way that things were before. And I think we still see threads of that for sure, but we also see I think a lot of the kind of modern Somm movement, the Somm competitions, like you're getting away from that towards the deep in the weeds, the esoterica of wine, which I'm not convinced is actually helpful to wine big picture. That's actually a good segue into I don't know what the last like really substantive question I had for you, which is like this is kind of a difficult moment for wine for a couple of reasons, for the demographic changes and changes in the way that people eat, changes in restaurants, inflation, the kind of new newly empowered anti-alcohol movement um, that we're seeing impact public policy, starting to impact public policy even. And I'm just curious, like, what you make of this moment, and if you see opportunities in this as well as challenges.
This is not new. Everybody's going to say, yeah, this is what's happened. This has been going on for 50 years. I can even recall 30 years ago, I remember a guy that was in the wine business. He was selling wine and alcohol and alcohol. This is 30 years ago. And his son came home to him and said, Dad, you're a pusher, like you're a drug pusher. They,
Okay.
they put alcohol with drugs. And so that's how it went down. I do feel look, and I've ridden that wave for 50 years. Where it was nothing to where it is today. Um, I, I I don't know how to answer the question. I sort of like said. I look at other products, by the way. You know, the Surgeon General wants to put on, you know, that this can cause cancer. Where are the other ones? You know, I think of soda right away. You know, and they talk about how many deaths happen with cancer and alcohol. How many deaths happen through specifically soda. These are stats that are there. I think I will never ever. Let me have a sip of wine as I say this. I mean, come on. I mean, you know, this is a Tempranillo. You know, I'm tasting it. And by the way, the only time I have wine is with you right now and food. I don't have a glass of wine. Um, I think we've gone through a lot with the pandemic.
Yep.
I think changing the whole world has changed. And I think this might be part of what's happening right now. Do I think fine wine is going to get lost? And I don't think so. I mean, yes, is it? You know, I was just reading a stat this morning that 30% of all restaurant sales are alcoholic beverages, but 50% is their profit from alcoholic beverages.
Right.
So it's a you know domino theory. You know, as my friend Karen McNeil is doing all this stuff right now. You know, come on over, rather than what is it, dry January and sober October. There's always going to be a little push, and there's always going to be conspiracy theories. Is it, you know, is it who's creating? Is it the World Health Organization? I don't think. I don't. I think you and I are going to be in business for a long time,
Yeah.
drinking
Yeah.
great wines and good food. And by the way,
One of the things.
I'm sorry. One last thing on that, Jason. I'm going to go back to religion,
Okay.
okay? Because I said I was Catholic, and if Jesus' first miracle, and I grew up going to grammar schools, Catholic schools, all my life, and senior in high school, and by the way, after that, I had jacket and tie, jacket and tie, jacket and tie. Then I got to Woodstock, the festival in '69, and they weren't wearing any clothes. So I said, I'm joining this tribe, and that's how I got up to this area and got involved in wine. But you know, I'm Jesus' first miracle, turning water into wine at the wedding feast of Cana. It's been inside my system since I was in first grade. If Jesus said it's okay, I'm going to drink it. You could quote me on that, by the way.
Excellent. I don't think I'm allowed to quote you on
Oh,
that.
oh fine. Okay.
I think that's against some federal regulation.
Okay.
Uh, but I think that's such an important thing is that like wine has been such a part of culture for so many thousands of years, and it is um, it is like many other things that, if misused, carries risks, um, and yet has all of these benefits in terms of bringing people together, elevating food, elevating experiences, and is a really lovely part of culture. So
It's not just culture, it's history, it's geography, it's chemistry, it's biology, it's food. Wine to me is I mean, I can go down that whole list, you know, of 100 different things that wine is. And yes, it's a business for both you and me, but I don't think we ever took it seriously, you know, in a way. Obviously, you got to make sure you pay your bills and stuff, but I just don't see it, uh, you know, the other thing that we have to remember. 40% of all Americans don't drink any alcohol. I think people forget
right.
this. They don't drink any alcohol. Another 30% don't drink any wine. They drink distilled spirits and beer. That leaves us with only 70%, assuming
Right.
30% of all Americans drinking, wine. And actually, my stat on that is that 90% of all wine is consumed by 10% of the population. Uh, I don't think that 10% is going to change. And we got to, obviously there's a lot of wine out there
Right.
too, which is a little bit of everyone just keep doing the vineyards and doing the vineyards, and well, there's got to be an end to that as well. So maybe it's a time to, be quality oriented rather than quantity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the most encouraging things I think about the current data is that people are generally drinking less but drinking better. And that's reassuring, I think, to all of us who are on the artisan side of things.
That's been going on for a long time, though, Jason. That's really been going on for a good 30 years. So I can be an elder statesman here because I can remember all of that stuff happening, and then the paradox, that was on 60, the French paradox of, that it's all, and then red wine sales go up, and it's like watching this whole thing. Sideways comes out, and Pinot Noir sales shoot up, and Merlot sales go nowhere. They go down. We're just in that wave right now on that roller coaster. It will all
Well,
get better.
great. Excellent. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing your perspective. I could sit and talk to you all afternoon.
You are going to. I'm coming to visit.
And I look forward to that. That would be
That's
that
my
would be such
next. Before the Black Sea, I'm going to come out and visit you at Tablas.
lovely.
I went there a long, long time ago, but I'm now, I'd like to see what it looks like today.
It will look different.
I'm sure it will. So
So
thank you for having me on. I toast you with some wine,
thank
and I know you're having water there. I get that,
Still in the middle
but
of my workday.
I,
Feels
I, I'm at the end, man. I'm at the end. I'm gonna go to the basketball game, dinner, basketball game, da da da. But keep this in mind: you have a glass of water. 86% of a bottle of wine is water, so you're not far away.
there we go.
So cheers to you, Mr.
Cheers to
Hops. Right.
you, Kevin. People want to learn more about your work, find out the different things you do, get links to your books. Is your website the best place for them to do
Yeah,
that? Or
I'm not like you, young people. I did a lot of different things at the beginning during the pandemic, and I said, I'm done. But one thing I would thank you for ending off with that because so the pandemic happened, and I do live stuff. I always did live classes and live, and that ended. Nobody wanted me. They couldn't have me. I couldn't go out. They couldn't
right?
go out. So I created, through my son, by the way, my 33-year-old son, the guy that's at T. Edwards, he said, Dad, all you have to do is push a button and you're on something called Zoom. I said, what is Zoom? And he said, not only that, my client is wine.com. Well, help me. And within 6 months, we had our wine class. It's still called the Windows on World Wine School. If you go to, we have classes starting the end of February, and we've had 9,000 students across the United States. And I sit in my living room. This is my dining room, I think it is. Anyhow, and you're tasting the same wines I'm tasting. Uh, you know, in Hawaii, in Alaska, in New York, in California, and it works. And I have a great co-host, Robin Kelly O'Connor, and then I have this dynamic Allison Vandenberg, who's in her early 30s, being is the producer. Got to check it out, ladies and gentlemen. It's Kevin at kevinzraly.com. I guess that's the best place to get me.
Amazing, Kevin. Such an
Thank
honor. Thank you,
you.
thank you, buddy, for joining me.
Mhm.
And I hope our paths all cross sooner than later.
Well, if you're in New York, you let me know.
I will almost certainly be there sometime before mid-year.
Got it.
Okay.
Give me a call, buddy. Thanks.
Will. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you
Bye
in a couple.
bye.